This is Beyond the Bell Tower, where an elite group of North Carolina State University students give us a behind-the-scenes look at their steps to success and show us how they attain even their lofty goals. These students, who are in the top 10% of the country, are active in student support services at NC State, a nationally recognized program designed to provide support for low-income, first-generation college students. Nationally, this population has an 11% graduation rate within 6 years. The Student Support Services students surpass that rate each year and go on to become doctors, dentists, accountants, and engineers. They work at Google, Apple, and the NCAA. They have earned PhDs in Ivy League colleges. These students go well beyond the bell tower to reach this level of success.
Welcome to Beyond the Bell Tower, the podcast for TRIO students at NC State by TRIO students. And this is our first Zoom recording podcast, so we'll see how that goes and figuring that all out. So thank you, Grace, who's here with our first Zoom meeting. So today we are talking to Grace Yoshihara. She is a graduating senior. Actually, she just graduated last month. And we are going to talk to her about a couple of different things. We are using Zoom now due to COVID-19 and the university's closure of campus. So this is in June of 2020. In March 2020, the campus went to all virtual. So no students were on campus. All classes were online. And most of the staff worked from home, and almost everything was closed: library, rec, and wellness, etc. That is what that's a huge impact, and we are experiencing this. This will end up being a historical moment or thing. And there's a lot of negative, obviously, like very serious negative consequences. But I know for Grace, what we're going to talk about today is that it was especially difficult because of not having a graduation ceremony. So Grace will be talking about that. We'll start off with that. But Grace, if you can introduce yourself and tell us all about you.
Okay. So my name is Grace, and I just graduated from NC State's Poole College of Management with a BS in Business Administration with a marketing concentration. My background, I was born in Japan and lived there for 5 years, and then I moved to Ghana. Lived there for 6 years, and I moved to Greensboro, North Carolina when I was 11, and I've been here since. What else did you want me to say in terms of background?
Yeah. Major, why you chose NC State, and even one of your best memories at NC State. Yeah.
So I chose to come to NC State. I was actually debating between State or Chapel Hill. I got into both,
Mhm.
but I ultimately chose NC State because I like the theme Think and Do. I think it's
Mhm.
very, you think of an idea and you do it. I think that's very goal driven, very goal oriented. So I really like that
Mhm.
catchphrase. And I just really like the way NC State is very innovative, and it presented itself as like a industry leader in terms of innovation and education all merged together. So that's why I chose NC State. And I would definitely say some of my favorite memories at NC State throughout these years were the people that I met. The education was
Mhm.
fantastic as well. It was hard. But I think the people that I met helped make my experience very cohesive and very wholesome. And I know those are relationships that will last forever, even if I forget the materials that I learned in class. So
Yes. And you have been in trios your entire time here?
yes.
Or, yep. And then you were in the Pack Promise program
Mhm. Yep.
also. And Pack Promise is a financial aid program that assists students with reducing their student loan debt. So, and also Grace has done a lot of very cool things with regard to her internships and all of that. I guess we can start with how your identity, how
Mhm.
you define yourself and how others have defined you has impacted your experiences here at NC State.
Okay. So, as I mentioned, I'm multicultural. I'm half Asian, I'm half African. And when I moved to America, I also fall underneath the first gen student and the low income student. So, when I first started NC State, there were a lot of programs and events that kind of tell you that, oh, you're a low income student and you're first gen, so things are going to be a little bit hard, but you just have to push through, and you're this and you're that. And it for me, it almost felt like that identity was kind of being pushed onto me. Like, yes, my name is Grace, and I'm a low income student, and I'm a first gen. But I
Mm-hmm.
knew that was just a circumstance, and my circumstance doesn't define who I am or my identity. So yeah, I happen to fall under those umbrella, but I chose to make sure the story ended differently. So I actively pursued high GPA, Dean's List, and graduated with honors. I pursued doing certain internships and making myself marketable in comparison to other people who didn't fall under the umbrella. Being active in campus organizations and different leadership involvements, making connections with career coaches and networking. So at the end of my story, or my college story, when I graduated, it wasn't Grace is a low income student who was able to survive college, but no, it's Grace is a successful NC State student, just like everyone else is a successful NC State student. So that's kind of how I didn't let my circumstance define my identity.
And did you have other experiences similar to that where people had made the assumption like it's going to be difficult for you without even knowing you, just the boxes that you check or the affinity groups that you belong to?
I would say yes.
Or
I would say, especially as a minority, you're kind of, it's like the way everything is presented to you, like in terms of media, in terms of the things professors saying people might say, it's almost like they're expecting things to be hard for you, so you need to kind of like armor up. But I guess for me, I always knew like life is not easy for anyone, so I always knew that even if I had to work 2 times as hard, I was willing to do it. So I never saw that as a setback or anything. I always just
Right.
pursued what I had to pursue, and I didn't let my circumstance hold me back.
Yeah, because what is the impact when somebody says to you, or society even says, you're going to struggle?
I think then you get scared, because I think that there's many instances in my life where that has happened to me, where I'm told I'm going to struggle. Then it's like, oh gosh, and I'm going to struggle. Or like you're going into a job interview and they tell you things like, NC State does this, like they tell you things like you have to have your hair pulled up a certain way and wear this kind of thing and that. And I'm just like, oh gosh, it's going to be so hard. And then when you feel insecure, it shows. And then when you are insecure to anyone that you're communicating with, then people aren't as receptive to who you are and what you're trying to communicate. So I think when those kind of identities are pushed onto you, it almost like inadvertently causes you to hold yourself back, which is why I didn't conform to the identities that were shoved onto me, because that wasn't who I am.
So what's your advice to other students who are having the same experiences as you?
I would say you should distinguish for yourself what is your identity and what is your circumstance. Society, life, parents, whatever, they define your circumstances because you don't get to choose where you're born or how much money is given to you, but you define your identity. So if you know, for me, if I knew I was a successful woman, I wasn't a low-income individual who's a successful woman. That wasn't part of my identity. I was just the successful woman. So I pursued that identity and I didn't adopt anything else. So I think, practically speaking, there are a lot of workshops and a lot of meetings and stuff where these identities are ingrained into you. I tended to stay away from those things. I didn't really go to a lot of workshops like that. Things like how to survive as a minority in NC State, or how to think. I mean, those are helpful, but I didn't want to survive as a minority at NC State. I wanted to be a successful NC State graduate. So I guess cater yourself to what you know would help you grow and help you identify who you are.
Yeah, no, that's good. And that's the piece too, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, is like your mindset and the philosophy in which you've lived. If you want to talk actually about the university canceling the graduation ceremony, because some of your like circumstances are determining how you feel about that, and how you so it's like your response to the graduation ceremony being canceled is like has been specific to your circumstances. You want to talk about that?
So with my circumstances, I would say, of course, things weren't always easy for me. I was always working multiple part-time jobs, and on top of that, I had to balance school, and I don't really have a lot of parental or family support. So it was a lot of things I had to balance on my plate and still stay as competitive and comparable to my fellow classmates who may or may not have had the same circumstances. So for me, graduation, the ceremony was very important to me because I thought it was, when I walk across that stage, it was the time when I can finally just offload everything, all the stresses, all the all-nighters, all the stressing about the bills and this and the other. I thought it was just a time where I can just let it all go and kind of start my new life as this recent rich graduate. But when the ceremony didn't happen, we got our diplomas through email. I'm pretty sure they mailed it to us too, but it just wasn't the same. And there was a lot of online graduations and online speakers, but it just wasn't the same because I felt like I never actually physically graduated. I feel like I just got a diploma, like a certificate. So I think that's why that was very important to me, because when you face certain hardships and you finally overcome it, you just want to just celebrate that. And when that celebration is taken away from you, it's like, did you even ever accomplish this in the first place? I would say that's why I was pretty bummed about no graduation.
Yeah, because you immigrated to the United States without your parents. So your parents aren't in the United States, correct? Yeah, and so that's the pieces of even having, like other people can't even celebrate it with you, or parents, which is one of the dominant groups that people celebrate with. Yeah. And so with that graduation, when did you start dreaming about that or imagining?
I would say I started dreaming about college graduation ever since I was probably like middle school or something. I had a cousin who also went to NC State, and he graduated around that time, like 2015 or 20, maybe even earlier, 2012, something like that. So when I saw him graduate, it just kind of like sparked the fire in my brain. I was like, whoa, that can be me in however many years. So I always knew that one of my long-term goals at the time when I was in middle school was to graduate college, and I was going to wear this, and NC State has red robes, or perhaps even if I wear a different color robe, I'm going to wear this to accentuate this color and that. So I've always been looking forward to graduation.
So with your cousin's graduation here, what, like, do you remember about that ceremony? What impressed you the most as a middle schooler?
So during graduations, they mention all these like degrees. He was in the sciences, and I think sciences people are so smart because I can't do chemistry or physics in my life. So when they kept saying like BS in anatomy with a concentration in human physiology and all this like big words, I was like, whoa, they're so smart. And then you have like graduate students as well wearing like the black robes, doctor students wearing like the weird hats and stuff. So it was just like, you're just surrounded by a room of smart people. And I was just like, that's amazing, because I could be one of those smart people.
Yeah. And so with your outfits, what you were going to wear, what did you think about that? Like, did you imagine that? Did you already have that planned out? Like specifically?
So when I decided I was going to go to NC State, I knew the graduation robe was red. And I always knew that I was going to do business. So when I graduated, I wanted to look like a business professional, like the most successful business professional you've ever seen. So I knew I was going to wear a white suit, like whether a suit dress or something, just something to look very professional, because white goes with red. And so that's kind of, I wanted to graduate and look the part, like look the part of what I always wanted to be.
So you planned your outfit at 18 years old.
Probably.
Yeah. And then did your kind of like how you imagine graduation, did that change throughout the years here than what you thought of as a middle schooler or 18, or did you kind of like dream of the same themes or imagine kind of the same imagines?
Yeah, I think it remained pretty consistent, because I didn't like think about graduation every single day or anything, but like as I got closer to graduation, especially senior year, then it starts to hit you like, oh my gosh, I'm about to graduate. And then it's like, next they're going to say, my name is pretty long. So they're going to say my long name, and then they're going to say my major and my concentration. And I thought that was just pretty cool. So,
and then you were going to apply to be a graduation speaker also. So then that was even going to be like more of a special like day. So what happened with that?
So the graduation speaker, that was something that I always thought was quite a cool thing to do ever since my high school graduation, when I saw the valedictorian and the salutatorian give their speech. So it's just something that was always on the back of my mind. Like, I would perhaps want to do it. I don't know if I'm qualified, but I will try to do it. So around early March, I think right before spring break was when the applications came out. So I actually started filling out the application and wanted to submit it. But then that was right about when school shut down. So that didn't happen, but it's okay.
So what were you going to say in the commencement speech?
So I was going to say something along the lines of the fact that if you set your mind to something, you can accomplish it. And even if your circumstances may not be ideal, because everyone has their own cup of coffee that they deal with when they're in college, despite all your circumstances, the fact that you're here graduating is a huge accomplishment. So henceforth, always set your mind to something and accomplish those goals, and you can do it. Something like that.
Yeah. So you obviously, from the commencement speech, like you had something to share. Like there was something that you wanted, like that was important to you that other people knew. Now, even like thinking about that is, what are the messages, even your ideas, beliefs, philosophies that you have that is really important for you to share? Like you want to share that.
So I think one of the biggest things that I would love to share to fellow classmates and things is to always plan ahead, and not just plan ahead one step, but plan ahead 2 steps, because plan A may not work out and you need a plan B that's just as good as plan A. And if you have that mindset, then you always have something to strive for. You always have expectations that you put for yourself. And as long as you're dreaming, you can do what it takes to get there. And then you plan again and keep striving for greatness. So that's one thing that I would definitely like to say, planning. And also to say procrastination should kind of be gone after college. I've never liked procrastinating. I have friends who say they work better under pressure, which is true. I work good under pressure as well. But I just don't like that pressure, because then you may not be as effective. So I would say perhaps now that college is over, now we have the freedom to literally do whatever we want with our lives. So let's make the most of it. Something like that. And also to say, kind of like I mentioned before, to not let your circumstances, whatever it is, define your identity, because you get to define your identity. Lucky for you, we have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I think you had said before, the statement was like, you get to choose your story. And there is a quote where it's, it's about a book, like something basically that you don't have control over everything in your life, but you have control over like how the book ends. And I wish I could think of that quote off the top of my head. But anyways, so yeah, explain that to us. Is like, what do you mean by choosing your own story?
Mm-hmm. So I think even with the recent turn of events with the coronavirus, it kind of, for me personally, kind of showed me how little control I actually have over a lot of things. I can't control a pandemic. I can't control the economy. I can't control the job market. But there's one thing I can control, which is my decision to not give up. I can control my decision to stay optimistic. I can control my decision to cope with certain things a certain way. And when you make these decisions for yourself and you control your actions and your mindset, you control the end of the story. Because if you choose to kind of supposedly fall into depression, which, no, that's not a good example. So you choose to supposedly give up as opposed to not giving up, then the end of your story is the story of someone who gave up. And that's not the story that you want for yourself. So that's kind of what I mean by choosing your own story, by controlling your actions and your mindset.
Yeah, because a lot of times people will feel like they don't have control, but that's not necessarily true. So one of the quotes too is that like feelings aren't facts. So what are the things, like especially as a student, what are the things that I guess it's almost like you can't control. It's like, what should you try to control? Because people will try to control people, and that doesn't work.
So I would say one thing that you can control is to say this loosely, your personality and your attitude. And what I mean by that is, as a minority, I've often felt like I've gone into a room or a classroom or an interview and automatically they may not like me because of whatever external biases that they may have. But I can't control that. I can't control how they feel about me. So what I can do is be the best version of myself, be a positive human being, be a easy to communicate person. And then if at the end of the day, the person ends up not liking me for whatever reason, then it's on them and it has nothing to do with me. So I can only control myself and my actions. So I just always try to be my best person.
Good. Yeah, so I found those quotes. Yeah, when we deny our story, it defines us. And then when we own the story, we can write a brave new ending. And so what makes me think is like when you own your story, meaning like you took control over your identity. Right?
Definitely.
And actually too, it's what are some of the chapters, like when you write your own book, like a real book, which we need your book. So what are some of the things that will be in that book? So like a lot of times people, kind of like the defining moments in your life and even defining people. Can you think of those? Or?
That's a hard question. But in a nutshell, I would definitely include where I was born and the fact that I traveled to 3 different places at such a very young age. I would define the point at which I started college, because for me that was such a big moment. Like, I can't believe I'm an adult now type thing. And then I would also definitely mention there's so many people that helped me throughout my journey in college, mentors, coaches, professors, friends. Even my sister, they would definitely make a huge portion of my book, because even though I may not have had the traditional support, like the parental support or monetary support and things, I still had other support systems that made me who I am. So definitely the key people would definitely be a part of my book. And going forward in the future, I can't say, I don't know what's going to happen, but
well, because you also mentioned about how planning is important to you. So we'll get to a couple of things in a second, but can you detail out like your planning, like when your planning began with college and how you planned all the way throughout college?
So I would say my planning really began probably like back in high school. I never really I mentioned before, I never really like to procrastinate and wait till the very last minute for anything, because I just don't really like being under pressure if I don't have to be. So I remember applying for colleges. For whether I really wanted to get in or not, I applied early action for every single college, just because I always knew that if I don't meet the early action deadline, I'll have a fail-safe deadline, which is the actual deadline. And that eliminated so much stress, because while all my other peers were still scrambling to write their essays, because their essays due in 2 days or 24 hours, I was done with mine months prior. So I just saw how much that caused me not to stress excessively. So I just carried that all throughout all throughout college. And my personality type is already very type A. I like to write lists and plan things and highlight things. So it just helped add on to my personality to be able to plan everything, so I don't have to procrastinate. So I think that's my long-term goal or my ultimate goal as to why I like to plan. It's because I don't like to be under excessive pressure if I don't have to be.
Yeah. And you do have control over planning. Like you don't necessarily have control over like other things on your to-do list, but you can write that to-do list.
Yes, definitely.
And so when you entered NC State, what were like the things you did to be successful? Because I know you came here and how many jobs did you get right in your first week on campus?
I started out Port City Java as a barista, and then I became a student office assistant, and then I did marketing events assistant. I did some catering. I did a lot. I just did a lot. But I guess some of the things that I did to be successful was so when I first began Summer Start, I was just literally fresh out of high school. The only job that was available during the summer was in Tally as a barista at Port City Java. So I did that, but I realized I know how physically demanding jobs like that can be, like stand on my feet for hours on end and to be expected to wake up the next day to go to class. That was just so demanding for me. So I decided for myself that I'm not gonna stand and work anymore. I'm gonna find a job where I'm gonna sit down and be in an office and put onto my resume. So once I made that decision for myself, the applications that I put in for positions kind of shifted. So now I was looking for office assistant jobs and marketing intern jobs. And so in terms of part-time jobs, that's how I was able to be successful, by making that decision for myself to not be physically exhausted just from working. And then on top of that, I also started a campus organization, not necessarily because I was trying to make my resume look good, but because I saw that there was a need for a multicultural campus organization, a church on campus, and there wasn't one. And there were other peers who felt as if they needed to be something like that on campus. It was just a matter of who was going to take the initiative to actually get going on this thing. So I just went ahead and spearheaded this project and started the organization. And it's still very running and successful today. 2 new sets of leadership has already come through. So that was a success story. And also, in addition to that, NC State has the culture of interning and co-ops. So I knew that regardless of how many part-time positions I had, or how busy I was, or how much money I did or didn't have, I was going to stay true to the culture of interning and co-op, so I can still be a competitive student. So I applied for internships, I did co-ops and notable companies like Disney to make sure that I still stand out as a star student. So that's kind of my story.
Yeah. So you started a student organization, the church organization, as a first-year student?
Yes, first semester.
First semester. So how did you do that? I mean, even a first semester student wouldn't even know that you can start like an organization. And it's really hard. I mean, it's a very difficult task to start an organization. So tell us how.
How I did it was, so first I knew there was a need for it. So the problem was there, and the solution was to start one. So since I know what the solution is, all I had to do was just execute the solution. So I just looked up on Google how to start a campus organization at NC State, and it led me to different people that I had to meet with and speak with, different tasks that I had to do. I had to draft out a constitution. I had to get it approved. I had to make sure certain positions were filled, like the treasurer, vice president, things like that. And I needed to make sure there was a certain number of students who were interested in being a part of the organization. So I walked around Tally with petitions, getting people to be interested, telling them about it. And all in all, after I was able to accomplish these tasks, then was I able to get this campus organization going. I would say my drive and just Googling, just doing the research is kind of what enabled me to start this organization.
Mm-hmm. So you're working multiple jobs, first semester, taking classes, and starting an organization. So
Yep.
I'm assuming you don't sleep, or like, how do you don't have fun?
I'm not sure how to explain this because a lot of my friends, I was on a dance team at that time as well. So a lot of my friends who were on the dance team used to tell me that I have too much on my plate. But I think the kind of person, I'm a busybody anyways, and I like having a lot on my plate. I don't like to be bored. I don't like to sit there idle. So having these things on my plate, I guess, is kind of what kept me grounded, because I always felt like I was doing something worthwhile and doing something important. And I was tired. I was very tired all the time, but I was okay with it.
Okay. Yeah, because there's another quote that I'm gonna have to look up in a second about, it's like what you choose, or like what you enjoy being difficult. So almost everything is difficult. Like people love to exercise. Well, there's pain, for exercising. And so it's like what difficulty you choose. And so obviously you chose a lack of sleep, which is not healthy. So,
it's not.
Now, how did that impact you, though? I mean, it allowed you to do a lot of things that were important to you. So you were able to have a strong spiritual life here, which I'm sure benefited you like tremendously. And so it's like that compensation for that sleep, and then jobs for your professional development, dance team for fun and expressing yourself and exercise. And then you are very, very smart. So you obviously studied a lot. But was there any, like, would you do anything different about your first year? Or are you glad that, like, it was like being really tired was, worth it? Or is part of it?
Yeah, I would definitely not do anything different. If anything, this is going to sound crazy, but I think I would have done more. Because I think I did a lot of things leadership and extracurricular wise, but I didn't do a lot in terms of like going to career fairs and networking with professionals and things. So, and knowing how important that is later down my college career path, I think I would have definitely started doing more of that as a freshman. But that's the only thing I would change, which is crazy to say I'd add on more. But
so now, obviously, you're saying like you would have spent more time building relationships. So when did you do that? Or like when you did figure that out?
I figured that out closer to junior year, like as I got closer to interning. Because when you intern, they actually throw you out in the professional work field. And you really do realize how workplace politics work. If you don't have a relationship with people higher up than you, it's not going to be as easy for you to move up vertically if you don't know someone in the vertical higher position that you're trying to get to. So when I soon figured that out is when I realized that, okay, I need to start networking like now.
Yeah, it's like relationships are as important as
your skills,
like skill. Yep. That's a big deal. So this is one of the quotes: everything worthwhile in life is won through surmounting the associated negative experience. So that's the pieces. Everything worthwhile is won through surmounting the associated negative experience. So that's you. I mean, that obviously is a philosophy of yours.
Definitely.
So what advice would you give other trio students, like, about that difficulty? So like when negative things happen and you have difficulties, a lot of students question whether they should be here, what their major should be, and all of that stuff.
So I think to students, I would say, not trying to sound insensitive, but in one way or another, everyone struggles. And I think maybe for minorities or underprivileged students, they may feel as if not everyone at NC State struggles as much as them. So it's like, is it even worth going through this because I don't even belong here? How can I possibly do this?
Mm-hmm.
But even if someone's struggle is less than yours or seems less, you just never know what the ins and outs of other people's lives are. So you just focus on yourself. You just focus on what your struggles are and how to get past your struggles, and don't compare yourself to other people, and do whatever it takes to overcome the struggle. And when I say do whatever it takes, I mean really do whatever it takes. If it means, I remember one time, or a lot of times, I used to work at Port City until like 11 p.m. And I would always have a change of clothes with me. So I would change in the basement of Tally, get on the bus in the middle of the night, and go to Hunt Library and pull an all-nighter because I had to study or do something for the next day. And then I have classes at 8 a.m. like usual. So those are things that I did. Was it fun? I like all-nighters, so maybe, but I mean, not really. It's no fun doing any of that, but if that's what I have to do to get here. So my story wasn't easy, and no one else's story is easy. So you just kind of embrace your struggles, accept that it's there, whether you like it or not, and do what you have to do to overcome those struggles. I would say that's the best advice I can give.
Yeah. So what happens like with being such a planner? Like not all plans are going to work out. Like you are going to fail at something. So it's just life. So how did you respond to failure?
I respond to failure. First, I mope around. I give myself maybe 24 hours or something to just feel sorry for myself and just do the regular human-like behavior of just feeling like life sucks and everything sucks. And right after I'm done, I tell myself that life is going to go on and life is not over. So I have to figure this out. So after I give myself the time I need to be sorry for myself, then I get back up on my feet and try to figure out, okay, what's the next plan from here? A didn't work out and B didn't work out either. So now we're going to figure out what C and D is. And then I take it from there. So I just plan again.
Yeah. And that I think you mentioned earlier is that you always have two plans. So you're prepared, or, you're just even knowledgeable of that, or accept that not everything is going to work out. So you do need to pivot. Yeah. And so this goes into another kind of like Mark Manson quote. Which one is like the avoidance of suffering is a form of suffering. So you can't avoid it. Avoidance of struggle is a struggle.
Yeah.
And this is funny because I just want to say it because there's a swear word in it. I love to. Pain is an inextricable thread in the fabric of life, and to tear it out is not only impossible but destructive. Attempting to tear it out unravels everything else with it. To try to avoid pain is to give too many fucks about pain. In contrast, if you're able to not give a fuck about the pain, you become unstoppable. So you didn't care about the lack of sleep,
Nope. I mean, I cared, but I didn't care too much. It was okay. That was a sacrifice I was willing to make. And I'll do it again.
Yeah. So with that planning, like what does that look like for you? Like how do you plan? Like because if you can explain like the process that you go through, if you use apps, what you do every day, every week, all of that.
So I actually love talking about this.
Okay, go ahead.
I love Google Calendar, and very conveniently, NC State ties everything in with Google Suites. So if you have Google Calendar, if I like final season, for example, I actually plan out the times that I'm going to eat, the times I'm going to take a nap, the times I'm going to sleep, the times, how many minutes I'm going to spend reading this page and this page. So for example, I had to read a chapter in the book, which is about 30 minutes. I allotted 2 hours, which is about 5 minutes per page, something like that. So I literally just planned down to the every last minute. So that way I know for myself that if I choose not to stick to my plan, then I'm going to end up being stressed later because now there's no time to do it. So I can visually with Google Calendar see for myself how much time I have to do something. So I have to do it because there's no other time to do it. So that's how I plan. Google Calendar is my favorite. And then also planners. I love planners. And I took a psychology class where your brain actually releases endorphins and like happy chemicals in your brain if you check things off the list. So that's why I like planners. So I'll read a chapter in a book and I'll actually check it off my planner. And I just feel so accomplished, like, yes, now I can read another chapter. And so planners and Google Calendar are how I do everything, even now, literally.
So like how often, like, so the Google Calendar, you just check all the time. You know, it's just kind of like a constant thing.
Yep.
And what kind of like, what did you go through to like decide on the type of planning that worked for you? Because a lot of times people, one of the biggest mistakes people make is like not allowing for enough time for things. So I chose to use Google Calendar because I realized how much I underestimate how much time I actually need. For example, I used to always be late getting anywhere because I would think it'll take me 15 minutes, but then I forget that there's traffic. So it takes me 20 minutes and now I'm late. So when I realized that even with studying, I'll think, oh yeah, I'll just study for an hour, but it's going to take me 3 hours to read this chapter. I realized that I can't keep underestimating how much time I need. So now I need to actually plan out everything. I can't just take a nap for 6 hours when I have to study. So I'm going to plan out how many hours I'm going to sleep. And so when I started planning, I did that so I wouldn't underestimate the time, because it's human nature to think we can get things done in such a short amount of time when we can't. And that's what leads to procrastinating. So that's why I chose Google Calendar, to eliminate all forms of underestimating time and procrastinating. And so how do you avoid distractions or things that come up that you couldn't plan for? Like even conversations with friends, you know, of like meeting people, being sidetracked off your calendar, your to-do list.
I think that's where the planning helps, because definitely I've gone to the library with my friends one night thinking I'm going to do something, and we just stayed there the entire night talking and I get nothing done. But because I planned ahead for that, I always leave myself like a flex space, like room for in case I don't get something done. And because I planned ahead now, even if I didn't get it done, it's not procrastinating because I planned on not getting it done, kind of thing. So I always leave room for space, room for things like that. So I think plan the distractions into your planning.
Yeah. So you don't get like sucked into YouTube where you keep hitting like the next video.
Actually, when I'm pulling all-nighters, I actually just delete my social media, delete the apps off my phone. And even right now, I'm job searching. Haven't been on Instagram in weeks. I just deleted the app completely. It's just self-control, I think. I want to know what's going on, but then again, I don't want to know because I have to focus on myself right now. So
what about Netflix?
I don't know.
Or the movie TV.
If I don't plan on watching TV and I don't have time to watch TV, then I just don't watch it. If I have something else to do, I just generally just do it. I think I'm so used to structure that I've gotten used to avoiding distractions.
Yeah, that's really, really disciplined. Like, yeah.
I try to be.
No, I wish I was as disciplined as you.
I try my best.
Yeah. No, you do it. You do it. Yeah, so that's the thing, is like putting actually up of like those physical boundaries. So like deleting those apps, like knowing what your tendencies are. We had one student, she would always go to like the library and use the library laptops so that it wouldn't show, like her apps wouldn't be there, but also so she wouldn't log online, you know, in different things, because if she had her own computer, like everything would open up.
Messages, everything. Yep. That's a great, great skill.
So you can delete your apps. You can follow your to-do list, whether you want to or not.
And coffee. I like coffee.
Yeah, and caffeine, for sure. Yeah, and then the other you mentioned before were the internships and co-ops. So you had some pretty exciting experiences. So can you tell us about that?
Yes. So I'll just start with the most exciting one, which was my Disney internship. So ever since I was born, literally, my mom was a huge Disney fan. I think Disney was built in Japan when she was a teenager. That's when it first introduced itself. So everyone around her age group is very like huge Disney fans. So I always grew up on Disney. everything Disney, Disney outfits, Disney music, Disney movies, everything Disney. So growing up, I always knew I wanted to somehow carry that Disney for the rest of my life. So then around middle school or something like that, I learned about the Disney College program. So I started doing research back then on what it takes to get in. I used to watch videos on interview tips and things so I'd be prepared. And then when I got to college, freshman year, they tell you to plan out your 4 years of college. So I did, and I planned out exactly when I was going to take the semester off to go and do this internship at Disney. And so when the time came for me when it was finally time for me to actually do it, I interviewed by luck, or I don't know, I successfully got in. I did the internship, and it was just the best experience ever. It really was.
So what was that process of like applying, being selected, and then getting the job? Because I'm sure there's a lot of other students who would want to definitely do a Disney internship.
So first, the internship, it's an internship, yes, but it's very Disney specific. So you're literally working in the park. So you may be put into like a food service role where you're selling popcorn. You may be put into merchandise, which is me, where you're working in the stores. So if you're not a huge Disney fan and you have no intentions of, I guess, working for Disney, I don't even know if I'd recommend it, because then you'd feel like you're wasting your time kind of thing.
Right.
And so the process is knowing what you want to do, your passion for Disney, knowing that it's there first. And then you apply for the internship. If you're selected, if your application is selected, you take like a questionnaire type. It's almost like a test part. That's part of the interview process. Once you go through, you get a phone call from a recruiter, about 20 to 30 minutes. And if you pass that, then you're offered the position. So it's about a 3-step interview.
Good. And then what was your job?
My job, I initially started out food service, but my skin started reacting to everything. So I got moved into merchandise, which I think was luck, because I'm a marketing student.
Right.
To be put into merchandise just correlated perfectly.
So then how did you make that happen? Like of
switching. So I realized that my skin was reacting. So first, I know no one wants to really do food service at Disney. That's one of the roles that no one wants to do. So I was like, there's no way they're going to let me switch. So first I tried talking to my manager, but she was like, yeah, I don't think it's going to be possible. So then I reached out to people who did successfully, because some people have asthma attacks and things like that. So they have to switch, but I guess the skin allergy wasn't good enough. So I asked them what their process was, and they had to go see their doctor and get a note and see a Disney doctor. So a Disney doctor has to sign off on the note, and hopefully you get placed into a role. So I did exactly that. I went to an urgent care in Florida, and I got the note. I went to a Disney doctor, talked to certain people, talked to my managers, connected here and there. And it got to a point where I almost lost the internship, because they're like, there may not be a role for you. But I was like, there's no way. I came all the way here just to go home. So I just had my fingers crossed and kept talking to my managers. And like, that's why I said it's all luck. Luckily enough, there was this role in merchandise that had nothing to do with food, so it didn't irritate my skin at all. And I got lucky. That was kind of the process.
Yeah. Because how did you handle when like your managers and whatnot are saying no? I mean, because that's really hard when your boss
says no,
you can't do something. And then you're like, no, I'm going to do it anyways.
I think it's knowing that I wanted to be at Disney, and I just, like, my skin was reacting. There's no way I can do this role. So I knew there had to be another way. There's always another way. I think there's always another way. So I just had to figure out what it was, and I did.
And so to do that, you talked to a lot of different people?
Yep, and I watched YouTube videos on people who did the program, who switched roles, because it's really hard to switch a role at Disney. So I just did a lot of research and digging into what other people did to be successful.
Yeah. And how long did that take, actually, that whole transition?
Surprisingly, only 2 weeks. I heard of some people who took months, but I was actually making phone calls to like Disney global HR offices. I was doing whatever I really needed to do to get the answers that I needed, and so it worked out for me.
So basically, it's like, you're not going to take no for an answer.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the things that we'll get to, is like your life philosophy and how you live your life, of being like outcome oriented, like that you're an outcome person. But first, let's talk more about Disney, because this is exciting of it. So what's your connection to Disney to be so committed to it since middle school? Because a lot of people will say, I want to be a vet because I like dogs. And then they get to school and it's like, oh, no, I outgrew it.
So because Disney was my mom's thing, she just loved Disney and we grew up with Disney ingrained in our brains. So I, as in me, my sister, and my brother. So, and I was very close with my mom. She was like my parent. I was really that close to my dad. So I always knew from a very young age that I just wanted to carry a piece of Disney because Disney was my association with my mom. So I just always wanted to have that. That's my happy place. So I want to be in that. That's where I'm happy. I'm happy thinking about Disney. I'm happy being at Disney. So why not do something in the future that I love doing and I'm happy doing? So that's my connection with Disney.
Yeah. So what did your mom think when you got the internship?
So my mom actually passed away 10 years ago.
Oh, I'm
so
sorry. I'm sorry, Grace. Well,
no,
I apologize. I apologize.
No, it's still part of the story I still tell anyways. That's why I love Disney.
Good. And then what, like, how has Disney impacted you? Like, what do you like most about Disney?
So
like in addition to your mom? Yeah.
Disney's motto is the happiest place on earth. So if anyone's ever been to Disney, it's literally you get on a ferry boat just to get to like Disney World. And then it's literally feels like you're saying goodbye to earth and you're in this happy place. And that's magical for me because I'm really in a happy place when I'm at Disney. So now that I'm older and now that I'm picking a career, I want to be a part of the people who make the magic for other people because who knows who else might have shared these same memories or what child might be impacted by Disney. So I want to be behind the magic.
Yeah. And then what are your favorite movies?
Favorite
Disney
movies? So Stitch, Lilo and Stitch. Stitch is my favorite because he was always a troublemaker. As a child, I've always been the troublemaker in my family, supposedly. So I always felt like I could relate to Stitch. And then Beauty and the Beast, I love Belle because Belle is like the little, in a little town, quiet village, but here's Belle. She's so different, but yet she's so cool. Beauty, and she's smart. Beauty and brains, that's what I love too. So Belle, definitely. And then Moana, because Moana is fierce and she's Polynesian and she's darkest skin tone. So if anything, I look like her.
Right.
Moana, Stitch, and Belle, definitely my favorites.
Yeah. And how did they, like, those stories impact your life and like how you, like, were there philosophies or things about the characters that you applied in life, like more than just entertainment?
So I would, Moana, for example, if you watch the movie, you notice that there's no like prince that saves her, or there's no rich king or queen who puts her to sleep or anything like that. So she's like the main character who solves the problem. And I always felt like that's amazing. Like if I had that when I was a kid, I would have felt as invincible as Moana is. So I think that's why I really like her now, because it shows that I don't need a Prince Charming to come and save me because I do the saving kind of thing. Right. That's why I like Moana.
And like with Stitch, so it's like, oh, if he acts this way, it means I can.
No,
so
Stitch
even
was
if you're
always
go ahead.
He was a troublemaker, yes, but that's an identity that was given to him by the people around him. He was like, he never felt like he was a troublemaker. He just felt very misunderstood. And I think that's how I felt as a child, because for example, if I break something when I'm a child, it's not because I'm trying to cause trouble. It's because I felt like this thing needed to be broken, or I had my reasons for doing whatever I did. So I just felt like people never understood me as a child. Like, why is Grace talking too much? Why is Grace doing this? Why is Grace doing that?
Right.
Well, if you would just listen to why I'm doing it, then you would understand. So I think I related to him on the fact that oftentimes, even now, sometimes I just feel misunderstood. Like, people don't understand why I do the things I do. But whatever, I still have my reasons.
Yeah.
So that's why I relate to Stitch.
Yeah. And you didn't think like, oh, that's just a character in a TV show? Because that's like where sometimes it's just,
I think no, because of my passion for Disney. I felt like they're real. I go to Disney World and I know it's costumes and it's people, yeah. But to me, that's really Stitch, and that's really a princess.
Right. Yeah, like they're based on like real human experiences.
Yeah, they're in itself real. That's what I like to believe. Like Stitch is a real existing thing that exists.
Okay. So what did you do when you first went to Disney and saw the like the people dressed up like Snow White and all the other characters walking around?
So this is gonna sound so childlike, but in my mind, they're not like people dressed up like that's really Cinderella, that's really Stitch. So I just get excited. Like I can't believe I'm seeing Stitch. Stitch was on the TV. How did he make it here? So I took so many pictures. I made a scrapbook. I made photo albums just to remember everything. So that's kind of, I just felt like I was in a movie.
yeah, no, good for you. And being in a movie is good sometimes, for sure. Now, how would you compare yourself with your like enthusiasm with Disney compared to like the other people you worked with at Disney?
I think, so the job in itself, any job can get hard, but I think I wanted to be there so much that I was willing to, like, it was hard, but yeah, that was part of it kind of thing. So I had the mindset that I was supposed to be there. Like there's how it's, to me, it still blows my mind that I actually worked at Disney because of how much I've always like kind of put Disney on such a high pedestal. So my mindset was always that I'm privileged and I'm blessed to be here. So I was just, work is hard, but yeah, I'll go to the parks after work. So whatever kind of thing. So
and and do you think like your passion and your connection to Disney helped you professionally?
Yes.
Like did that show, like did they value that there? I mean, I would assume so, but
yeah, definitely. Because for example, I worked in merchandise. So the store, I worked in Disney's, I think, third biggest store worldwide. So it's imperative that everything looks very neat and very Disney, like have the Disney look. And because I was passionate about Disney, even when no one asked me to, you would see me like folding up t-shirts and putting the plush animals and making it look perfect because I wanted Disney to look like that. Whereas if someone didn't really care about Disney, why would they do that extra work? You're not getting that. So I think my passion definitely, because I wanted Disney to be perfect.
Yeah. Good. And then what do you want your future to be with Disney?
I want to definitely be in corporate Disney. I want to be behind the magic. I want to help come up with the storylines, the marketing tactics, just to make sure there's everyone feels. Moana was the first step, but now we can do more. So just to make sure now everyone has that same, the same opportunity to build that connection with Disney as I had.
Oh, okay. What are some storylines that you are thinking about? Because I'm sure you've imagined movies.
So I would definitely say characters with more racial representation. And with that, like, for example, there's Mulan. She's Asian, but she's also, I think Mulan's Chinese. But then maybe perhaps, for example, Indians are Asians, but they may not relate exactly to Mulan because at the end of the day, they're not from the same country. So we can do more to diversify the diversity efforts even within specific racial groups. I think that's something that I would try to do.
And what kind of like the character personalities do you want to do or do you want to create to impact kids just the way they impacted you? So it was like, it was important to you that they have a storyline of Stitch. Here's a troublemaker. Are there certain characteristics or storylines that you want that you think need to be told?
I think Disney's doing an amazing job, a fantastic job right now of trying to encompass everything. So I would only just add on to the efforts that are being there now. For example, maybe we need a princess who goes to college, or I don't know, something very bizarre. Maybe we need Moana. That's why I really like Moana. There wasn't a prince figure, so maybe we need more of that. Or maybe we need a prince figure who doesn't need to go and save a princess. A prince who just focuses on accomplishing what he needs to accomplish. Things like that. So, yeah, that's something I would definitely add on to with what Disney has going on.
Yeah, because it's like providing, because everybody is so different. Like all kids around the world are so different. So it's like creating something where more, kids can connect with just like you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like you would think you do something for kids. It's like no parents aren't going to want a movie about a troublemaker. where they're like the hero, you know.
Mhm.
So then their kids will be like, you can say, oh, I can break stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, just feel like you just don't understand. Okay. And then what was your other internship or co-op?
So I've done a couple. I worked at a chemical company as a content curation and syndication intern. That was digital marketing. That's when I concentrated in marketing, but that internship was at when I realized that I want to go more into data analytics and numbers and thinking, critical thinking. So that was one experience. And I also did market research and communication intern last semester. And with that, I had a lot of autonomy. The team was very small, about 2 to 10 people. It was a startup environment. So I kind of learned that I'm more effective in a smaller environment because I have more autonomy to grow and take initiative and be autonomous over my work. There's some experiences that I've had. And also as a part-time job, just during college, I worked as a marketing events intern. So with that, I helped set up events and plan events in Tally and Fountain, Dining Hall, and Clark. So those are some experiences that I did throughout college.
Yeah, so you have students have the opportunity to do jobs as a student, like that they would get after they graduate. Like there's career jobs available to students.
Yeah, and I think it's dependent on communication as well, because when I got my internship, the market research one that I just mentioned, it wasn't at first a market research and communications intern. It was just a marketing intern. But when I was interviewing and they always ask you, do you have any questions? And I said, yeah, do you mind if we model this part-time student job? It was a work study job too. Do we mind if we model this as an internship? And can I focus on these areas of growth because this is where I want to go in terms of career? And she said yes. So just being willing, knowing what you want and communicating that to make it happen. Because people are here on college campus, everyone's just here to help you.
Yeah, so it's just like, just because it's on a website or written down doesn't make it true.
Not in a sense. You can modify it, or you can ask at least. The least you can do is ask.
Good for you. And then with your other internship, one of the ones that you had, you did a similar thing with demanding a more like professionally related position. Or
yes.
So basically we're coming to the point of that you change every job you have. But go ahead. No, you should. You made it your own. So yeah, if you want to talk about that experience.
Okay, so this was during my content curation and syndication intern. I was assigned, from what I felt like, was assigned a lot of work that I couldn't really see what the deliverables are. I didn't really understand the big picture. It almost just seemed like I was given tasks to complete and not really given a project to take over. So I just kept asking for more. I kept asking for more projects. I kept asking for more work, but the answer was always, no, you're doing this. You have this on your plate. So it got to a point where I'm just like, I don't understand, because what I'm asking for wasn't unreasonable. I was just asking for something viable to do. So how I went about that was, since I had nothing to do, I made an entire presentation of everything that I had done since I started the internship, which I took note of every single day. I would write down what I did. So I made a presentation of everything that I did, with pictures, with the outcomes, with basically, so you can say that, so I could say that I did this and here were the outcomes. I went into my manager's calendar and I scheduled a meeting in there. And I told her that, hey, I scheduled a meeting with you to discuss what I've accomplished so far, just so we can benchmark my progress. So then I went into the meeting with her and I basically just presented to her what I've done and said, so here's everything that I've done and here's why I want more and why I want to have ownership of certain things, because I want to add on to these things. And from there, she said yes. And from there, she gave me more projects, and she also connected me to other people in the company. So then I was connected with product managers. I was connected with the sales team. I was connected with supply chain team. So if digital marketing was not sufficient for me, then I could go and get assignments from other departments. So that just all helped with my growth in that internship. So that's kind of what I did.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I would like defying your supervisor, or like not accepting like what they say. It's like, no, you can't. No, you can't. I'm not going to accept you telling me no. That's scary to a lot of people.
It's because I know what I'm capable of, and I know I was being undermined. So I just had to let them see what I was capable of doing. And I think that's all it took. It was communication, but in a very creative, thinking outside the box manner, because clearly just telling them I want more wasn't enough. So what it took was a presentation. So I was going to do the presentation.
Yeah. So, you know, for some people, it's like they're told no once and it stops there, but you pivoted. You said, okay, let me ask in a different way. So did she have any negative response to
No,
you?
she
Like
was,
when you, go ahead.
she actually, it's usually, I guess maybe it just comes down to miscommunication sometimes. Because she really thought I'm just an intern, so she doesn't want to overload my plate. But I was feeling the exact opposite, that yes, I'm just an intern, but I'm still capable. I don't want you to undermine me. So when she saw that I was willing to take initiative to just even tell her all of this, that's when she realized that, okay, then she is capable of handling more. So I think she didn't feel negatively at all.
Right. And so that's the piece of like not assuming that she's saying no because she doesn't like your work or doesn't want you to do other things.
Just being willing to advocate for yourself.
So what's common too is people will like complain and be miserable and not and you know, like not take action to change their situation. I don't know if you've known anybody like that before.
Even so, during this internship experience, I talked to friends and I talked to my sister about they're not giving me anything to do. I don't even know why I'm here. And I did the whole complaining thing. And usually, sometimes, a lot of the times what people tell you is, if you're getting paid, then why does it matter? Or you only have 3 weeks left, so why does it matter? But then that's when you have to decide for yourself what kind of advice you're going to choose to listen to. And yeah, I was getting paid, but what am I going to write on my resume? I got paid. So I knew I had to make my resume stand out after this internship. So I just didn't listen to that advice. But yeah, you're getting paid. You only have 3 weeks left. Whatever. You know, I was like, okay, but I'm still 3 weeks is a long time to get a lot done, and I'm going to get a lot done. So I picked and choose what advice I wanted to listen to. And sometimes there's no advice you can listen to, just yourself. So.
Yeah, because the piece that you bring up is like being cheated out of professional development opportunities, which for that whole thing, the statements of, well, you're getting paid, was like, well, with not getting those professional development opportunities, that's going to impact how much you're paid in the future.
And
like
even
in your
what
career.
Opportunities you can obtain after that.
Yeah. So not having those professional opportunity, you know, development options. No, you may lose money. Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah. No, you're my hero. Great. You are a tough person. Yeah. And so that's where it comes up, what we talked about before too, is being like outcome driven. So do you want to, like, what does that mean to you? Because that's the terminology you used, how you described yourself, is that you're outcome driven.
So for me, I always know the ultimate goal that I'm trying to accomplish. Or I don't know, but like I have an idea of what it is I'm trying to accomplish. So with campus, when I was starting campus organization, I knew I wanted to start it and get it going. When I went to my internship, I knew I wanted 3 to 4 bullet points, like amazing bullet points under my resume. So if I'm only at 2 and I have 3 weeks left, and I need to get 3 more, so I know what the outcome is. So I actually have to do whatever planning, whatever presentation, whatever communication, whatever networking I have to do to achieve those outcomes. So that's why I would say I'm outcome driven, because I don't just I know there's some people do believe in this philosophy of taking it day to day and just enjoying the ride, which I enjoy the ride fine. But also the ride is determined by my outcome, kind of. So that's how I kind of navigate life.
Yeah, it's like of one, to have high expectations, and also to like know where you're going.
Yeah, I don't necessarily, I've heard this before, I don't go with the flow. That's not me. It's fine. Some people are like that and that works for them, and that's great, but I can't, I don't even know how to do that.
So how do you relax?
How do I relax? I don't know. So I read a lot, and like I said, I do. I don't know if I said this. I do photography a lot, so that's fun. I read a lot. I read a lot of fiction books, but I also read a lot of like articles on like market trends and stuff. That's interesting to me, and the economy and things like that. So reading keeps me sane. TV doesn't really work for me because when I'm watching TV, I start thinking about other things. So TV, that's why I don't really get distracted by TV. So I think that's how I relax. And ultimately, if I have nothing to do, I sleep.
yeah, that's true. That's true. And dance.
Yeah, and dance.
And one of the major parts of your college career was coming to campus without any money. So you came to campus with $10 and you're like, now you have a car, you moved off campus. So how did you do that?
So freshman year, I kind of knew I needed to get a car if I need to go to internships because I need to drive to those internships. So with budgeting and with planning, I soon figured out that practically this is what I did. I figured out that meal plans are pretty expensive. So I just canceled meal plans altogether. And I had 2 part-time jobs at the time. So with canceling a meal plan, I was able to save that bulk amount of money, like thousands of dollars literally, and just stash it away and not use it. And my everyday expenses for food and clothing and things like that, all that was generated with my part-time jobs. So that's kind of what kept me motivated to work hard part-time because I knew I needed the money. So then by stashing away thousands of dollars each semester, it got to a point where I was able to buy a car. So that's kind of how I bought a car. And in terms of campus resources, like with health insurance and food and things like that, there were a lot of resources available. That's even how I met you. The school, if you fall, I think if you're PAC Promise or if you fall below a certain income level or something like that, the school does have options where they give you grants or loans to pay for your health insurance. So when I found that out, I enrolled, I signed up, and so my health insurance was covered. And towards the end of the semester, there's like a meal plan share program where they literally just load your student ID with meal plan credits, I guess, just if you ask, I guess. So I did that as well. So that helped. And I've personally never been, but I know there's like food pantries and stuff that are also available to students. So I just utilized the resources that were available, and resources can not just physical resources, but just people as well, talking to people and receiving help. And that's kind of how I was able to, I guess, reach these goals.
Yeah, because how did you eat without a meal plan? I mean, even like with time shopping, or how do you cook when you're living in a dorm, etc. So like, did you ever skip meals? Go hungry?
So generally I don't eat a lot. So like, for example, I eat like maybe once or twice a day. So even when I'm hungry, like, I don't know, maybe that's one of the sacrifices. Like, I'm kind of okay with being not hungry, like starving, but like it's something like skipping a meal because I have to study or something, like that's fine with me. I'll just snack here and there. So the food portion wasn't too much of a sacrifice for me, I would say. If anything, my biggest sacrifice, or what was really daunting, was working a lot, because then I really didn't have a lot of time. But I think meals, like skipping meals, was never really a big problem or issue for me. And I just cooked a lot. I made the sacrifice for myself not to eat out a lot. I still don't eat out a lot because I know it's expensive. So I make it a point to cook every month. I have a budget for groceries, and I stay to the budget, and I just kind of discipline myself into those things.
Yeah. And so what was the impact of not going out? Because that's with college students, a lot of that eating out is very social and like building relationships.
I think to begin with, I never really had a lot of time anyways. So that wasn't really like a big thing for me. But when I did budget, I always budgeted for maybe going out 3 times a month or something like that. So even when I did go out, that was still part of my budgeting. And if I went over this month, then I'll try to compensate for it next month, or I'll just pick up extra shifts or something like that. So I always had a budget that I stayed within, so I wouldn't be broke.
Right.
I tried my best.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then what was the impact of working so many hours during school? How many hours did you like tend to work per week, like during the school year?
It ranged because a lot of what I did was during the weekends, like Saturday and Sunday, I would work like 8-hour shifts both.
Mm-hmm.
So it would range anywhere between like 20 to like 30-ish. It just depended completely on the week.
That's a lot of hours, 20 to 30 hours. Because research has shown that after 10 hours of working, that's when it will negatively impact your academic performance. Because what did you miss out on? Like, if you had the option of not working, what would you have done?
So I've never been to a football game ever before because my catering job, I catered at every football game in the glass towers. So for example, if I wasn't working like that, I think that would have been fun to actually go to like a tailgate or a football game. I've never had that experience, so maybe one of these days I will. But things like that, or Saturday nights, if my friends were going out, I used to be a CA, so I would work every Saturday night. So, and I didn't get off till midnight, so I would just say, no, I can't go, I'm not going. And so things like that.
So on football game Saturdays, then you're working from 8 a.m. to noon? I mean, midnight?
Yes, it was like the football game sucked. It was like 8 a.m. to like 5 p.m. or sometimes 7 a.m. because donors and stuff come in very early to eat. So we'd have to set up from like 7 a.m. to like 5 p.m. or something like that. So those suck.
Yeah. And then you're working till midnight.
Oh, these were 2 different semesters. So the CA one was just, It got to a point where I didn't want to like stand. I think I said this before. I didn't want to stand and work anymore because it was just physically demanding. So I just shifted to jobs where I was actually sitting down.
Okay. No, that's a lot. And so that's the piece of even getting to the football game. That means you're getting up at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., something like that.
And it sucks.
Yeah. Because the other thing that you had said too is that a lot of students you know of who are low income or don't have family support, this whole thing of like, there's no way you can buy a car. And so what's your advice too for students who don't have a lot of family support, you know, or support coming from the outside, either financial or advice, and to be able to do these things? So how does an 18-year-old, or, you know, what's your advice like for 18-year-olds to figure out how to buy a car?
Okay, so one, I think the first part is there is a way to buy a car. It's very possible. So if we're talking practically, I mean, I guess someone could mimic exactly what I did and just cancel a meal plan and get 2 part-time jobs or whatever. It's possible. So if you save, let's say $2,000 to $3,000 every semester, I only had to save up $5,000 because I ended up buying a car up front for $5,000, which actually ended up breaking down. So down the line, I had to get another car. So I think now knowing this, what I would do differently and what I would suggest for anyone else is freshman year, you can get a credit card, like a Discover card or something, not so you can run it up, but just so you can start building your credit. Because once you have your credit built up and you have about $5,000-ish set up, you can actually finance a car through your bank. If you have good credit, your bank will give you an auto loan. So if you do that, then you can get a good car, like a 2018, 19, 2020 car, whatever, that won't give you any problems. The engine won't break down. You don't have a lot of repairs, and you can finance it. So you're only paying like $200 a month or $180 a month or something like that. And if you already have about $5,000 saved up, then you actually don't have to worry about month-to-month car payments because you have enough saved up for at least the next 3 or 4 years. So that's what I would suggest. That's what I do now, but I wish I'd known that earlier so I wouldn't have bought a car that ended up breaking down.
Yeah, because it's like breaking down is really expensive.
Yeah, and thousands of my internship saved money went into car repairs, and the car just ended up failing anyway. So I had done what I'm saying now earlier. That's what I would suggest.
So you didn't need a cosigner on an auto loan?
No. So freshman year, I signed up for the Discover credit card. So I've had been building credit ever since freshman year because I've always been working a lot of part-time jobs. I think that kind of helped with paying off credit card bills and using it for little purchases. So when it came for a time, it was just last year was when I bought my new car when my old one broke down. When it came time for me to sign a loan, I actually had really great credit. So I was able to get a really good APR rate with my own credit, and I had enough money saved up for a down payment, and I had enough saved up for the next payments for the next 2 or 3 years. So it ended up working out. So that's why I'd say building credit is important.
Good for you. That's a big deal. And then the other piece too is there's a lot of loans for like first time car buyers and for college grads. So there's also very specific loans for that. So good.
Definitely.
And where did you learn how to build your credit? And even like learn how to manage a credit card, like so that you didn't go into debt.
So there were times when I know there's definitely times when I maxed out my credit card, but then every semester when I get a refund, I just pay it off completely. So I have a blank slate. And I don't know how, because they never teach you these things, but it's just something that you know inadvertently that you need to have good credit or you're not going to be able to buy a house. You're not going to be able to buy a car. These aren't things you think of freshman year. These were things I was thinking about freshman year because I wanted to buy a car. So knowing this, I knew it was imperative to build credit, which is why I tried my best to build the best credit that I could. It wasn't always good, but I tried.
No, and also we want to definitely talk about, because we hadn't discussed, like you had mentioned how we met. And so 2 times are kind of similar. So the first semester you walked right in and said, I don't know what to do about health insurance. And so we figured that out for you. And I'm glad you knew to come here to do that. And then the second time was 2 summers ago. So summer 2018. Again, you walked in, no appointment, and you sat down and you were like, I'm homeless.
Yep.
So can you tell me about, one, how did you know to come in and see me? And also, how did you even know you were homeless? Because that's a big thing where students don't even know that they just think they're making do. So I met the federal definition of homeless when I was in college, but I just thought like, no, you hop around from house to house to house, when friend of a friend, it's just like what you do. So what's I didn't label it.
Yeah. So it was summer. So I lived on campus. So what happens between summer, the end of summer and the beginning of fall semester is just like a 2-ish, 3-ish week break where there's no student on campus housing. And if you're like me and you don't really have a reliable place to go back home to, or you need to stay around campus because you have campus jobs, which was my circumstance, then what do you actually do? And because it was summertime, I had no friends here that were like, oh, you can stay over, because there was no one here. So then I met you through leadership when you had a discussion on homelessness. So I was like, okay, now I'm actually at a loss here. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. So let me just go and seek help. The worst that could happen is you say, no, there's no option, and then I'll figure it out from there, I guess. I came in and I found out about the emergency student loan and being able to apply that towards like temporary summer housing and things like that. So I think that's why I knew to come into you, and that's kind of how the problem was solved.
Yeah, because I remember what I was saying when I spoke at Leadership, and Leadership is like one of the best experiences I think you can have at NC State. So even when I worked as a staff member for Leadership, like that's one of the best experiences I've had. I highly recommend it. So I remember talking, and so at NC State, with our research being done, 10% of students experience homelessness during a year. And so there was about 70 students at Leadership. And so I was saying, of you all in this program, there's 7 of you that didn't know where you were going to stay before this, like with the dorms closing. And there's, 7 of you or a handful of you who don't know where you're going to go when you get off the bus on campus with Leadership. And that's the question you need to start asking your peers is, do you have a place to stay? Do you have that is a question that, again, you could help out like 10% of your peers here at NC State. And that's a huge number.
Definitely.
So, and that was your exact experience, correct? So, So, when Leadership was over and they dropped you off on campus with the bus, you had shared the story that you were trying to stay with a person within the dorms. So, if you can explain what your homelessness looked like, what the situation was.
So I came back from like leadership and the rest of the
Mm-hmm.
summer was still there. So I was taking summer classes. So I had summer housing. But then when summer semester was over, that was when it's like I had nowhere to go. So what I thought I should, like I was literally at a loss. So I had all my
Mm-hmm.
stuff in like a couple of suitcases. And I was like, okay, then I'm just gonna sleep in the lounge. It was Wolf Ridge. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
gonna sleep in the lounge. So I did that for like 2 nights. And then the gym is always there. So I could always go to the gym and shower and stuff. But then soon, like even after 2 days, you just realize how like unreasonable that is. That's not
Mm-hmm.
doable. That's not doable for 2 or 3 weeks. So that's when I was like, oh, and then on top of that, I was working. So I would just leave my stuff in the lounge and put a blanket over it and hope that no one throws it away. So it just got to a point where I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, this is not gonna work and it doesn't make
Mm-hmm.
any sense. And at the time I hadn't bought my car yet. So I couldn't just drive to a person that lives like 30 minutes away or whatever.
Right.
So I was literally just stuck. So that's why I just came to you and I'm like, what do I do next?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember I think you had said that you woke up one day and there was a family in the
Mm-hmm.
lounge
Yep.
there
It's
to
not doable.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's the piece is like how dangerous that is.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very dangerous
Yeah.
because you don't have a door. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have any like safety. Um,
Yeah.
and then so it's not safe, it's not healthy, it's not necessary. It seems like
Yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah. So what did we do then? So you came in and we're like, can't do this. And I probably said, holy fuck, no, you can't. So what did we do?
So you referred me to Mike. I also met him at
Mm-hmm.
Leadership. He's like the
Mm-hmm.
student ombuds person. And
Mm-hmm.
he just kind of like ran me through all my options. And I learned about the emergency student grant or something. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
about $500 or something like that. So I
Mm-hmm.
was able to get that. And with that, I was able to apply it towards ES King has like summer housing options for people who intern around this area. So I was
Mm-hmm.
able to apply that fund straight to the student housing, the summer temporary housing option. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how we solved that problem.
Yeah. And so that's the piece of like knowing your resources. And, for
Mm-hmm.
students, it's like knowing to ask because there's always a way.
Mm-hmm.
And then also like with the university, say like meal share program, the student emergency
Mm-hmm.
fund, like it's out there for you.
Yeah.
Like it was established for your situation.
Mm-hmm. And I
Mm-hmm.
think also just recognizing that NC State is a huge institution with a lot of money. So
Mm-hmm.
there's always help if we just look, if we just
Mm-hmm.
ask. And I think that's hard too. Like sometimes it can be quote unquote not for me, but I know it can be like embarrassing to say something like, "Oh, I don't have anywhere to stay," because it's like, "Oh, you don't have
Mm-hmm.
anywhere to stay." That's embarrassing. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, are you gonna hold yourself back because of embarrassment, or are you gonna actually seek help? And there's power in being able to speak out and seek help for yourself and
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging that you can't solve everything by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and that's a huge issue is asking for help. And also like when you didn't have like when housing was you didn't have housing,
mm-hmm.
like why didn't you tell somebody then? Like was
like
there anything of like you were afraid you're going to be like judged, or like no
um
student ever experiences this, so if I ask for help there's not going to be any, or
yeah. And I think it's more so like when hard times happen, you kind of go into survival mode. So you
mm-hmm,
think you can do whatever it takes to just survive and get through it. So I think that was
mm-hmm,
my mentality. Like, it's fine. I'll just sleep here for 2 weeks. It's
mm-hmm,
okay. I just thought I'll be good. I can just survive. But
mm-hmm,
then when I figured out that I couldn't, that's when I was like, yeah, I need help.
mm-hmm. And that's one of the things too, is that we're asking for help is so hard, or knowing like there is help available. Like why are we putting that on the responsibility of students? So if the university knows that 10% of students will experience homelessness in a year,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, are they asking where
Mm-hmm.
students are going? Like, do you need a place to go? Because what do you think the university should do with student homelessness and hunger, like based on your experiences and
Mm-hmm.
like experiences of other people you knew, like your friends and stuff?
Mm-hmm. So I think feasibly speaking, the easiest thing that the university could do is like a lot of dorms on campus, so just at least keeping one open. It doesn't, we don't need to have room service. We don't need to have, even dining halls don't even have to be open, but just keeping one dorm open for people who just need like a 2-week stay during holidays or during summer breaks. Because a lot of leases, even if you move off campus, a lot of leases don't start until mid-August, and a lot of leases end at the end of July. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people who don't have stable homes to go to have to figure out what they're going to do for 2 or 3 weeks. So I think it would be nice if the university just kept like maybe one dorm open, even if it's like for a charge or for whatever, and it gets charged to a student account or anything. I think when it comes down to where do you sleep or how much money do you pay, a lot of people would choose the option of having a safe place to sleep.
Right. So how would you pay for like campus housing when you don't have financial aid?
That's
like
hard.
I mean, knowing like if you don't have a place to go when the dorms close, that probably means obviously like you don't have other resources. So yeah, if you had the ability to pay $800 for temporary housing or $500, you would have done that.
I would say, since considering the demographics who would need the housing wouldn't have immediate cash just like that, I think the easiest thing that the university could still do and still collect this revenue would be just to charge it on their student account, and then they'd be responsible for paying for it the following semester with their refund or something. And I think that's doable. I think so.
Now, how do you think how can you contribute to educating staff and other students and all of that stuff?
So to educate students, I would say to first kind of like eliminate the thought process that you're going to be judged if you ask for help. Because if you're judged anyways, if you ask for help, you're asking in the wrong place anyways. Because I can only imagine that if now that I don't face those issues or struggles anymore, if someone was to come to me and say, hey, Grace, I don't have anywhere to stay, what do? I would be more than willing to help, because I can't imagine anyone that way. And I'm pretty sure the people who do want to help, they feel just that same way. So people are willing to help, if only, so the advice to students is just seek the help, because people want the help. They just don't know you need the help because you don't ask. And then for faculty and staff, I would say just to be empathetic, because there might be an assumption that everyone who goes to NC State is rich and is made and parents are rich and this and the other, but that's not everyone. And even for someone with a rich parent, what if their parents hate them and don't want them back in the house or something? So you just never know. So just being willing to help, I guess, because students are in college because they don't want to face these things down the line. So just help them get to the end of the line, kind of thing.
Like, did any of your teachers or instructors know, or any of your like campus job supervisors know that you didn't have a place to stay, or that you didn't, that you were going hungry sometimes?
No, and during that summer I actually worked catering, so hunger wasn't an issue because I just got so much food from work. But in terms of places to stay, I don't know, I think this is just me having like a big defense wall sometimes. I don't want to ask for help from people who I know would be no help at all. So I just didn't bother asking. I think that was kind of what I did.
Yeah, and so I think that's important too, is that there's a student doesn't look homeless, or that it can be very hidden. Like you have to look for it.
Definitely.
Do you want to talk about anything else? Because you've been going here almost an hour and a half. So what would you like to end on? We talked about tons of stuff.
End on saying that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, as long as you're willing to look at that light. So look at the ultimate end goal and not at all the darkness around you, and you will get to the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and we're excited because we'll have you back here at NC State because you were accepted into the luxury management graduate degree. Graduate program. So that also exciting. We won't miss you. We don't have to miss you for a bunch of time. So thank you so much, Grace. You're my hero. You're amazing.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
TRIO Student Support Services Program and Student Support Services STEM are federally funded college retention and completion programs. These programs focus on academic, personal, and career support for under-resourced undergraduate students. At TRIO SSS and SSS STEM, our goal is helping our students reach their goals. We are currently accepting new students to our program. Apply today. Go to www.ncsu.edu to learn more about student support services at NC State.